it's becoming quite apparent that Pat Condell is becoming the atheist version of Glenn Beck. And I'm sure most of you know who Glenn Beck is. He's that crazy right-winger on Fox News who's always going about how everyone's coming to get you, and he's always trying to create this paranoia, fear, and panic. And what Glenn Beck essentially does is he brings up a news story, but he twists that news story into something that isn't true. He twists that news story to fit his own propaganda and to fit his own agenda and to fit his own fear-mongering. And that's exactly what Pat Condell recently did in his latest video. Now, Pat Condell recently talked about the UN conference, the UN resolution that recently took place at the UN. And Pat Condell's talking about how freedom of speech is being attacked, how your freedom of speech is going to be taken away, how you Americans have to wake up because the First Amendment, the American Constitution, is about to be attacked and overridden by the UN-backed Islamic resolution, which says you can't criticize religion or bash Islam, etc., etc. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read to you from the very news article that Pat Condell linked to his video. Okay, I'm going to read to you the very article. And this is what it says. And this is going to show you how Pat Condell completely twisted the story. And now I quote from the news article. The UN Human Rights Council approved a US-backed resolution Friday deploring attacks on religions while insisting that freedom of expression remains a basic right. The report goes on to say, the resolution has no effect in law, but provides Muslim countries with moral ammunition the next time they feel central tenets of Islam are being ridiculed. Did you get that, ladies and gentlemen? Did you get that? This UN resolution, this UN Human Rights Council, this resolution that is being supported and backed has no place in the law. It's not going to come effect into the law. It's not going to come into the American Constitution. It's not going to come into the American law, and it's not going to come into any Western law. This is simply a worded resolution that says we deplore attacks on religion. That's it. So next time someone bashes religion or attacks religion, what this means is that a member state can come out and say, I deplore this. And the UN will say, we deplore this. It's basically their freedom of speech to say, we're against this. That's it. That's all. Now, how many of you would have known that coming out of Pat Condell's video? I mean, if you watched Pat Condell's video, and after you were done watching it, what you would come out thinking is that, whoa, the UN is coming after us. The Islamic countries are coming after us. They're going to make this law that says you can't bash or criticize Islam. As Pat Condell said, wake up, America. The Constitution is being attacked. The First Amendment is being attacked. That is a lie. As Joe Wilson said, you lie. You lie, Pat Condell. This is not coming into the Constitution. This is not coming into the First Amendment. This is not coming into any law. So you just lied to your audience. You just made fear to your audience. You just created more paranoia, more panic. And ladies and gentlemen, what's someone gonna think? I mean, let's be honest, Pat Condell has a lot of viewers. Now, when you say stupid stuff like he just did, when he says your Constitution is going to be attacked, what's going to go into the mind of a few crazy people? Oh, our freedom of speech is going to be taken away? They're going to make it a crime to bash Islam? Oh no, what's a person like that going to eventually do? You see, that's what you have to think of. So, it's quite apparent, as I said, Pat Condell is indeed the Glenn Beck version for the atheists. And you atheists, you need to speak up, because this is a blatant lie. This is a blatant lie. And you guys are always talking about honesty, sincerity. Well, let's see how honest you are. Let's see how many of you are going to come out and say, Pat Condell, you're actually full of bullshit, because the UN resolution does not say anything about what you just said. No, it does not. And here's another thing. Pat Condell talks about freedom of speech. But what is freedom of speech? Perhaps Pat Condell can tell us, perhaps Pat Condell can enlighten us on the freedom of speech concerning whether you can question the Holocaust. Can you do that? In fact, just a few weeks ago, a group of Dutch people were prosecuted for simply making a cartoon against the Holocaust. Where was the outrage? Where was the Pat Condell video condemning this freedom of speech that is being taken away? Just a few months before that, George Galloway was barred from going into Canada because he held a lot of anti-Israeli views. He's a politician that's against Israel, and they barred him because of his opinions when it comes to the Middle East conflict. Where was the outrage? Oh, that's right. Most of the right-wingers like Pat Condell supported it. When a person like George Galloway, a left-winger, gets barred from a country because of his opinions, you won't hear nothing coming from Pat Condell and his fans. They'll be jumping up and down. So, ladies and gentlemen, when Pat Condell talks about freedom of speech, then know that his freedom of speech, his version of freedom of speech, is simply bashing and insulting Islam. But it can't work the other way around. I mean, do you remember just a few months ago that when a few Muslims decided to protest against British soldiers returning to their country, Pat Condell went crazy. He said, get out of the country. Can you believe that? So these people use their right to freedom of speech to attack the soldiers, and Pat Condell comes out saying, get out of the country. So if they use their freedom of speech, they should get out of the country. So, I mean, I don't know how people buy into this Pat Condell thing. I mean, it's so obvious he's a hypocrite. It's so obvious he just did a Glenn Beck. And this is the guy who many of you blindly support, even though all the facts are against him. All the facts are against him. And in the next video, we're going to talk about Pat Condell and human rights. We're going to see if Pat Condell really cares about human rights. So indeed, wake up, people. Pat Condell has just turned into Glenn Beck.